This is video number 7 that we've done of Daniel King, and he hasn't gotten anywhere remotely close to being impressive. Maybe this time, right? After all, a stopped clock is still right a couple times a day, but I think that King is going for the record, the most incoherence ever in the history of mankind. And that's not exactly a record to be proud of, but let's go take a look. Daniel King is a complete idiot, and this video is going to prove it once again. Today, he takes on the teleological argument for God, which, as you're going to see in a second, falls apart entirely. Now, after we're done here, I want you to run over to his video and read the single comment that he's gotten. I reference it again at the end. But you'll be able to see just what a complete imbecile this guy actually is. He's just putting that on display for the entire world to see. But we do have a video to get through first, so does the teleological argument prove that God is real? Yeah, I wouldn't be holding my breath.
The teleological proof God is real is the evidence from design.
Except that's not a reality, that's just a claim. This is one more so-called proof that's going to fail miserably because, well, of course it is. But this is something that's very, very common among the religious, and the reason they're not bringing these supposed proofs to the non-believers is because I think they realize it's all going to fall apart under the damning light of reason. People aren't going to be impressed with your interpretations and your wishful thinking. So let's get into this after this very important strut.
Premise A, what is designed cannot randomly exist.
But that's just asserting design without demonstrating design. That seems to be a problem for the religious, right? Now, I'll agree that something that you can demonstrate is designed, and that part is very important. That's not going to just crop up at random, to use his terminology. Yet, they can't ever demonstrate that any of this stuff was designed. They can only assert design. They can only interpret design, and that's not the same thing. You don't just get to say, well, I think this was designed, and therefore it was designed. No, we're going to ask you to present your evidence for your claim. You're going to have to show us how you got there and prove that this was actually designed, and your fee-fees don't count. I'm going to get this out of the way up front since I know it's going to come up later. It always does. How can you tell if something is designed if, in the beliefs of Christians, absolutely everything was designed? What criteria can you conceivably use to differentiate things that were designed from things that just happen naturally, since in your way of thinking, absolutely nothing in our universe happened naturally? I've never gotten a good answer to that, but let's continue and maybe he'll come up with one.
Premise B, the universe and living organisms bear evidence of design.
How do you know that? Again, what is your criteria for determining what is designed and what is not? Because according to your beliefs, there cannot possibly be a criteria for that. Everything is designed, from the biggest stars to the tiniest microbes. Every single quark ever existing in the universe was designed by their imaginary friend. Now, that's just a claim, of course, not something that they can go back up with any evidence whatsoever, because, again, there cannot possibly be any evidence of design in a universe where there's nothing else. We're having problems already, and he hasn't even made it out of the stupid syllogism yet. So let's just let him wrap it up, because I have a feeling that the worst is yet to come.
Conclusion: therefore, a designer of the universe and of life exists. This designer is God.
Says who? That's just a claim. It's not demonstrated in any way. Granted, none of this is demonstrated. It's all just yanked straight out of their asses. But this is why we have to evaluate what's actually being said, not the conclusions that they're just arbitrarily leaping to. Of course, this is just one more reason that they don't want to talk to us, because we're never going to let this fly without rational evaluation, and we all know they can't handle any of that. It's really why all of these supposed arguments for God fail right out of the gate. It's not even an argument for God, it's an argument for a designer. As I said in the Kalam video, the conclusion must be drawn demonstrably from the premises, and just like in the Kalam, here God isn't even mentioned. It's just arbitrarily tacked onto the end because that's what King wants to believe. Yet you could plug in anything, right? This designer is Mickey Mouse. Yeah, whatever. The second that you understand how philosophy works and how logic actually works, the religious completely fall apart. Which, again, is why they don't want to talk to anybody who actually understands how philosophy and logic works. They just want to talk to dumb people, because those are the only people who are going to take them seriously.
A cathedral, a computer, a painting, a symphony, a light bulb. What do all these things have in common? The answer? Design.
Dirt, rocks, stars, the list goes on and on and on. When you're cherry picking your examples, as King is clearly doing here, in order to drive your conclusion, it's just blatantly dishonest. Yet, as I said before, in the Christian worldview, and I hate that word, but we'll use it because that's a thing that Christians like to push, everything is designed so it shouldn't matter what he says because God supposedly made it all. Why did he pick those things specifically? Because he knows that they'll get the kind of reaction from his intended audience that he wants to get. If he had said dirt and rocks, even though according to his religion that's still all supposedly designed, his audience would have given him some pretty funny looks. He's pandering to the reaction that he wants to get, not to the honesty that he's trying to pretend that he has.
Cathedrals are designed for religious experience. Computers are designed to make calculations. Paintings are designed to please the eye, as symphonies are designed to please the ear. A light bulb is designed to produce artificial light. All this design suggests designers. None of these things self-assemble.
But let's stick with his light bulb example for a minute because, he brought it up. He specified artificial light. Well, there really isn't artificial light. There's just light. But let's talk about the sun for a minute because why the hell not? Because the sun did self-assemble. We've seen that kind of thing happening throughout the universe. There are entire stellar nurseries out there where stars by the millions gather raw materials, self-ignite, and generate their own solar systems, using absolutely nothing but natural processes. Now, I'm sure King probably doesn't know that, and honestly, probably doesn't care. But that's the way that it actually works in the reality that we all share. He talks about cathedrals, but let's downsize that just a little bit. Homes. We all know about homes. Homes are designed. But man started out living in caves, and caves are entirely natural. When your home is a cave, was that designed? You can dig a cave if you want, but natural erosion makes caves all the time. Those are not designed by any demonstrable designer. There are massive cave formations out there that came about through entirely natural processes, no designer required. So, as is no surprise, King is wrong once again. What the hell else is new?
A cathedral has an architect and builders. A computer has a technician. Paintings have painters. Symphonies have composers. Light bulbs have inventors.
And what do stars have? What do caves have? How do you prove it? Because this is where he gets into trouble. He can't prove anything at all. He's just drawing analogies that don't hold up under rational evaluation. And of course, there's a fallacy for that. The false analogy fallacy is an argument based on misleading, superficial, or implausible comparisons. And that's exactly what he's doing. These things that he's just yanked out of his asshole all share a common characteristic because he's designed it that way. Therefore, that characteristic must apply to all of the things over there because, he says so. Yeah, King, screw you. You are completely full of it.
Consider a Rolex watch. Inside the watch are 115 individual pieces fashioned with meticulous care.
Oh, good. The watchmaker analogy. This has been so soundly debunked over the years that we're not going to go over it again. Let's just fast forward until we get to something interesting, which, honestly, at this point, having not seen any of the rest, but we might just go all the way to the end. So, let's see.
To name just a few of the parts found in a watch, there's a crown stem, a ratchet wheel, a barrel bridge, an escapement wheel, a balance bridge, a spacer, a yoke spring, setting levers, setting springs, a clutch, perpetual wheels, barrels, and weights. All of these delicate parts work perfectly together to make 3 hands move around a dial divided into 60 parts that count for seconds, minutes, hours, and a day. When I look at such a watch, taking every second in perfect synchronization, I know it exists because of a skilled watchmaker who made the watch. The watchmaker analogy is the classic proof from design to designer.
And it's been a complete mess since about 5 minutes after William Paley came up with it in 1802. Even before the book was published, David Hume had already debunked it. And that's a pretty mean feat, debunking an idea that hasn't even been published until 25 years after you were dead. This is absolutely nothing new. Apologists ought to be embarrassed to keep using it, yet they're not, because they know that they only have to appeal to stupid people who don't know who David Hume or William Paley ever were. And that's why these things are always stated in a very emotionally comforting way, because they're intended to appeal to dumb people. Now, this might have sounded reasonable in an era where we had no clue about evolution or modern physics, but today it just sounds idiotic. I'm not exactly surprised that King is using it because,
This argument was proposed in 1802 by William Paley in his book Natural Theology. Paley writes, "In crossing a forest, suppose I pitched my foot against a stone and were asked how the stone came to be there. I might possibly answer that for anything I know to the contrary, it had lain there forever. But suppose that I found a watch upon the ground, and it should be inquired how the watch happened to be in that place. I should hardly think of the answer which I had before given, that for anything I knew, the watch might have always been there. Yet why should not this answer serve for the watch as well as for the stone? For this reason, and for no other, that when we come to inspect the watch, we perceive what we could not discover in the stone, that its several parts are framed and put together for a purpose. The mechanism being observed, the inference we think is inevitable that the watch must have had a maker, and at some place or another, an artisan who formed it for the purpose which we find it actually to answer, who comprehended its construction and designed its use."
It's because we understand that watches are made. We have individual experience that shows that watches do not come about naturally. We can go to watch factories and watch them be put together. And that's not true of rocks. That's why when Darwin came along and showed evolution to be the case, this argument should have been filed away in the big box of bad ideas, but the religious just can't let anything go. The argument is full of tons and tons and tons of fallacious thinking, everything from false equivalence, circular reasoning, non sequiturs, a big argument from ignorance, and of course, as I said before, a false analogy. Nobody should take this seriously. Yet here we are in 2022 with most apologists still making use of it because, unfortunately, it works on the morons in the pews. And that's kind of a sad thought, isn't it?
By the same logic, when the balance and beauty of the universe is understood, it becomes apparent that it was made by an intelligent designer.
Ah, yes. When you look at it from my perspective, you'll see that I'm right. Yeah, but your perspective is idiotic. It isn't remotely defensible. You have no evidence for it whatsoever. This is, once again, why worldviews are so patently absurd. Instead of saying, here's where the evidence that we have at hand points, we're going to accept that, at least provisionally, until something better supported comes along, the religious just start off with a conclusion that they really like for emotional reasons, and then they dishonestly, and it is dishonest, King is doing this on purpose to get where he wants to go, but they do this dishonestly as a means to make money and maintain power and control. So long as their followers remain subservient, they're happy, because this is all just a con. People like King might actually believe it. They've been lied to by other conmen in the past, but that doesn't stop it from being a scam. And it's really too bad they're not bright enough to see that.
Creation tells me there is a creator. This is the argument from design, or what is referred to as the teleological proof.
Yet all you're doing is asserting that there is a creation so that you can get back to your own emotionally comforting beliefs about a creator. The beliefs come first, not the evidence, and that's the problem. In any rational evaluation of reality, we make observations about the real world, and then we try to explain how those observations make rational sense without applying our own internal wishes and dreams to the equation. Then we set out to independently and objectively test our ideas to see if they actually work out in the real world. The religious don't do that. They start off with an emotional belief in a god, then they run around and cherry pick the data and declare, see, God done it. Getting to that conclusion is all they care about, but that's not how rational thinking works. Rational thinking only cares about getting to the truth, no matter what that truth turns out to be. It doesn't take your childish fifis into account at all, nor should it. The religious are doing reality wrong, and I trust nobody is surprised.
The word teleological comes from the Greek word teleos, that means end, completion, or purpose. The teleological proof for God's existence argues that the universe and all life is full of design and purpose.
It really doesn't, though, because it's seeking to get to a singular conclusion which isn't actually supported by any demonstrable evidence. Now, it looks like this video is going to be shorter than usual, which is kind of a good thing, because looking at King's pudgy, smug face isn't high on my list of favorite things to do. He spends the last minute and a half of his video, nearly a third of the total runtime, advertising for his books and his courses and all that crap. And like I said, he's really only in it for the money. Now, he's done that in every video, and I just skipped over it, but this is the first time that it's been this extensive. So that made me kind of curious. So I decided I'm going to watch it. And I found something interesting, although in retrospect, it's not very surprising. It was just his standard end of video nonsense, and then, for about the last minute or so, we just got a black screen. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and clearly he's not even looking at his own videos for quality control. That's not exactly surprising. So instead of this being a 5.5 minute video like I thought it would be, it's a 4.5 minute video with a minute of complete incompetence. This thing has been up since January 8th, 2020, which means that in all that time, absolutely nobody has ever told him, dude, you got a problem. Because nobody's actually watching his videos. At the moment as I'm writing this video has had 23 views, and I'm one of them. And exactly one comment from an atheist, which Daniel replied to and basically just repeated his mantra instead of actually responding to what we said. Daniel King is a ludicrous joke. He doesn't actually know how to respond to criticism. He just figures if he just keeps repeating the same stupid nonsense over and over and over and over again, we'll somehow start to take him seriously. And that's not going to happen. What a complete moron, but I guess that's really no surprise. This is Daniel King we're talking about after all.